Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. New year, new podcast. We will be discussing the racing on New Year's Day in Baal. With me here to do that is not somebody new, it's still Issam. Issam, thank you for sticking with me through the entirety of 2022 and onto a very nice 2023 with more podcasts.
Yes, thank you for having me. Happy New Year. And I don't know if I hope that this race is not going to be the race in terms of tendency for the next coming races. And we are going to have some more tension, but we will speak about it in the episode.
Yeah, we have some exciting things coming. First, we will be finishing this cross season, and then over the summer, we will bring you something new in terms of podcasting, as well as to some monthly or sometimes in the spring classics a bit more often some road news and mountain biking news. But for now, let's finish this cross season in style. Issam already said it, today was not the most interesting race in Baal. The best start in the men's race was for Vanthourenhout, but in the second lap Pidcock took the lead. At that point there were three riders in the lead, Vanthourenhout, Pidcock and Iserbyt. The attack of Pidcock saw him open a gap, and from there on the race kinda fell into its form. We had Pidcock leading, and he had a gap that fluctuated between 8 and 18 seconds for most part of the race. Vanthourenhout and Iserbyt took turns trying to chase. They sometimes came closer, but Pidcock looked to be in control and be on his way towards victory. But in the final lap, everything went wrong for Pidcock. On the pump track downhill, he flew airborne, lost control, and that led to him landing in a deep rut. That deep rut launched him into the banners, which caused him to crash pretty nasty. He was then overtaken by Vanthourenhout and Iserbyt. Pidcock still tried to fight, but he had a couple of injuries from that crash. It didn't look too serious, but enough to hamper him that he couldn't really continue. Iserbyt was able to open a gap in that final lap, and he was able to take his first victory since Ruddervoorde, which was in October. Crazy to think how fast time goes. That race was just over 2 months ago. Vanthourenhout ended second, and Pidcock limped to the finish and was able to claim third. Pidcock looked in control, Issam, but then he lost it in the final lap. There's been some speculation if he was showboating there and trying to do a whip. What's your thought on that? Did he try to do that whip, or do you believe his version of the story that he simply went too fast and lost control there?
No, I think at first I should say that I thought that it was probably because of of a whip and a bit of showboating. But if you look it back, it wasn't really showboating or anything. He came, I think, a little bit too fast and had to control it. And I think he did that correctly, but then he came into a rut which was quite deep. I think his landing, he lost a little bit of his balance, and with those hills there, with the speed that you're carrying, it's very hard to then have your balance correct when you're landing, especially if you're landing a little bit expecting to go one way with your complete body, and then your bike decides to go complete other way, and yet there was not a single moment that he could control what happened. So yeah, I think in the end it's just the nature of that part of the course, which in my opinion is something that has nothing to do with cyclocross. It's it's not because the crash of Pidcock that I'm saying this, but to be honest, since it's been added in Baal, I feel that is just something that's it's super dangerous in a way. It's nice to look at, but it's something that, especially when it's a bit muddy and it had some rain or something like that and is a bit slippery, it's very, I would say, dangerous. And, even a guy like Pidcock that is in control of his bike, that has probably one of the best techniques in that field, can make such a mistake. And a mistake there, he can be very lucky that it was just the way he crashed, that he didn't really break anything or something, but it could have been ending way worse. So luckily for him, and I guess for everybody, that he came out of it well. And yeah, I think in the end he was in control of the race. If that didn't happen, he would have won, but that's how it goes.
I agree with you. I don't think he was showboating. I think the mistake was that he tried to carry more speed through that section than in the laps before. He came to that penultimate jump, which is the most dangerous one as it's the steepest one out of all of them, with a speed that was too high that he couldn't push his front wheel down and go over it. He really got launched, and they kind of want to give this a spectacular effect of riders going airborne. But if we remember back to the first edition it was in, the course was muddier. Van der Poel on one of the first bumps lost control. He did some sort of split and hopped off his bike. It's not because of the Pidcock crash that I think it's a section that doesn't really have to do much with cross, but over the years we've seen nasty crashes there. Pidcock wasn't the only one, and without the ruts it's doable. But I'm going to read a bit from the Jens Decker course reviews, which states it very well. So he says it's dangerous to have so many jumps in a row on cross bikes in the mud. We saw one big crash in this year's women's race, so that's 2022's race, but we've seen a couple of more over the years. It's just unnecessarily dangerous to have so many of the jumps. One or two would have been more than enough to get the same effect with less danger. And I can't state it better than that. Just the continuation of jumps makes it super risky for riders, as what you don't see on TV is that it's downhill quite a lot. So you gain speed because of the bumps, like they launch you, but also because over the grand scheme of things you drop a solid 15 meters, which is just leading you into this trap at the end, with this steepest bump being the penultimate one, and that's where Pidcock got launched. And it's unfortunate, else he would indeed have won the race, but it is what it is. At the end of the day, he should have taken a bit less risks and just kept going at the same speed, because, as you say, he had it in control. Iserbyt and Vanthourenhout gave it their all, but they simply weren't a match in terms of power for Pidcock today. But in the end, you need to be there when your competitors make mistakes. That happened, so I guess fair play to Iserbyt and also to Vanthourenhout.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's due to their credit, the fact that they, despite being dropped, they kept believing in the fact that there could be a mistake made, or even a technical issue could already bring them back in contention for victory. So, they kept riding, and they got rewarded in such a way. And I think, for somebody like Iserbyt that had some difficulties over the course of a couple of weeks, and like you said, it's been a while since he won. I think for him it came at the perfect moment, to be honest, because there were a lot of doubts about him, and I think he had those doubts about himself as well. So I think that in the end, they deserve the victory. But I think that Pidcock today, he said it as well in the interview after the race, that it was not the Pidcock of 100%. I think that those races that he had done before, he was feeling it a little bit today, because I think that if Pidcock was a little better in terms of form, and I think if he didn't had to do all these races after each other with Heusenzolde, Diegem and then Loenhout, I think then he was today maybe a little bit more fresh, and that would have helped him to open the gap and have a bigger gap, and maybe with a bigger gap he could have maybe maintained his victory position, and he wouldn't have taken all those risks in the descent as well, because those guys behind him kept the pressure.
I don't necessarily know if it wasn't the same Pidcock, because if we remember to the race in Kortrijk, he raced in a similar fashion. He attacked relatively early and then went in control and reacted to what his chasers did, and I saw a similar pattern today. Every time that Iserbyt and Vanthourenhout came relatively close, he accelerated. Even after he made a couple of mistakes in the middle part of the race, he still had quite something left in the tank. So maybe he wasn't going all out and was racing economically, which would make sense because it's another race in Herentals, which will be his second last race of the season. He will be skipping the World Championships. He will only be racing Benidorm. I think it's a big shame that he doesn't race the World Championships, and the reason that's given is the fact that his focus is on the Spring Classics. And on one hand, I can understand, because if you're going to focus fully on the Worlds, you're going to do some cross-specific training. And even if you don't, you need to build towards Worlds on like the week before. You can't really go for long endurance trainings without that coming at the cost of Worlds. You can't go for interval training because it will hurt your Worlds chances. But on the other hand, I think it's a big shame because he has the opportunity to become world champion there. We saw that he was very good against Van der Poel and Van Aert in multiple races this Christmas period. But maybe they expect that Van Aert and Van der Poel will improve much more, whilst Pidcock doesn't have the same margin. But my cross heart says it's an absolute shame, but my rational head says that to some extent it does make sense. But I'm a bit torn because like head says smart, heart says unfortunate.
Most of the time it's the head that decides, and I think that's the same in this situation. I think that Pidcock himself, maybe would have loved to race, but these things you plan them way ahead, and I think they already knew last year, probably let's say November or even in October already. They knew that the Worlds was probably not going to be a race that they will participate in, and yeah, it's understandable they have to make these decisions. He's already a world champion, so he has that in the back, and the racing is going well. So if last season wasn't really the best of road campaigns in his opinion, in general, it wasn't the best road campaigns, I think. So then he probably wants to make sure that he's 100% ready for the road this year, and I think that he knows that if he is capable of reaching a form like he had in the Tour de France, that there is a lot of possibilities for him in the road campaign, and especially in the Spring Classics, which are going to be his main goal. So I think that it's 100% understandable. It's a big shame that we are seeing such a contender not participating in the Worlds, which I think definitely had a shot in the medal and maybe even more than that. But it is what it is, and those are the big teams, and they decide in the end what is the best for the rider.
Yeah, and it probably plays a role that Hogerheide isn't the best course for him. I mean, it does have some elevation, but it is not a super technical course with all too many downhills, and it will probably have some flat, muddy sections, and that doesn't really play into the cards of Pidcock. So I guess it makes sense, and he is basically giving away what looks like a free medal, but riders like Pidcock don't race for a third place. They come for the win, or they come for nothing. Go big or go home is their motto. And then I can understand that you think, well, on this course, Van Aert and Van der Poel, bigger guys, more raw watts will probably be better. And that you then make the decision before the cross or like Christmas period already that you're not going to do it. I would have hoped that the Christmas period had changed his mind, but his team manager Kurt Bogaerts said that it was basically confirmed, almost 100% certain, so I don't expect it to change, but it is unfortunate. But hey, it is what it is, and I guess we'll need to live with it that way. I would still like to comment on Iserbyt briefly, because I didn't do that yet. I think the interview after the race, it was pretty Iserbyt. I mean, it included some weird things, like I didn't get too much attention from the press when Van Aert came here. It makes sense because those riders are simply a class above you, and they will write about the riders at the front of the race. But I won't stick to that too long, because overall my tendency that I spotted in the interview was that he was just super happy that he got the support from his team and was able to get a victory again, because it's been a long time since Iserbyt hasn't had a win in 2-month period. So it's good to see him up there again. I think it will be a bit up and down, but we are probably going to be heading towards an amazing battle at the Belgian Championships, as Van Aert is skipping that. So Iserbyt will be taking some positive momentum from this race to the Belgian Championships. I do wonder how consistent he will be able to stay, because a race like Zolder did look very worrying, but now he has a couple of good races in a row, or exactly 2, Diegem and Baal. So I wonder how that sticks, but also Vanthourenhout in second place today put in a good effort, and if it had been for a few less mistakes in the middle part of the race, he would have probably dropped Iserbyt, and then he would have been probably taking the win here, but you don't buy anything for that because he did make those mistakes in the end.
I think, for both guys, it's a very good result. They started very well. They had a mission during the race. They stayed together. They helped each other when it was possible. And, for both guys, it's a very, very good day because a 1-2 with Pidcock was probably by a lot of people seen as quite unlikely. But they achieved it, and in the classification right now, the X2O trophy, it's also looking very good for Iserbyt, because Iserbyt at the moment, like 1 minute 27 on Van der Haar, who didn't have the greatest of days. Vanthourenhout also closing up quite massively on Van der Haar, with still a very interesting couple of races coming up, with Herentals and Kokzijde already a couple of days away. For them, for Paul Saus-Bingo, it's definitely a very good day in the race to start 2023.
Yeah, Van der Haar didn't have a good day, and I think it's a bit surprising, but the start was the thing that cost him the most. I think this dry mud and the bits of running required didn't really suit Van der Haar. He could have had a better course or better conditions, but he should have had a better start, because he was already 25 seconds down after lap 1. That went up to, I think, 45 by the end of lap 2. And then it stayed relatively stable around 1 minute after lap 3, once he had really gotten up to steam. So it's unfortunate for Van der Haar. I would not say that the X2O trophy is game over. Yes, the gap is 1 minute 30 now roughly. And yes, that's a tough ask. But then again, Iserbyt, I would not count on him being stable until the end of the season. That knee injury is still not gone. He's still talking about the pain he has from it, and that he at some point thought that he maybe need to put an end to his season. So I wouldn't count on Iserbyt not having a single bad day in the races that are left to come. Iserbyt will now be racing 3 races in a row. So the question is, how does his knee hold through that? Or when we come to the end of the season, when we still go to Lille and Brussels with this series, how does he do then? I would not be betting on him staying stable, so Van der Haar definitely still has chances, and the same goes for Vanthourenhout, who is 1 minute 48 behind in this series. Let's look at the entire top 10 then. Iserbyt with the win ahead of Vanthourenhout, Pidcock and Van der Haar. Very strong ride by Jens Adams in 5th, ahead of Nieuwenhuis in 6th. Quinten Hermans ends 7th in his debut for the Alpecin team. Cameron Mason, another strong ride by him, in 8th. Pim Ronhaar ends 9th, with Timo Kielig rounding out the top 10. Kielig, another strong performance by him. We already discussed him in the Mol podcast, so I don't think there is need to repeat ourselves. What was up with Thibaut Nys then today? Do we know anything? He had a good start, but then was forced to withdraw from the race, Issam.
No, from my understanding, it was, he started quite well, and I saw him together with Ronhaar. So, at that point, everything seemed to be all right. Then he was dropping quite quickly through the field, and in the end, it was a DNF, which, yeah, it's a bit of a shame, because I think that Nys was entering a very, very strong period at the moment, and I think for him, a race like Baal is definitely something special. It's less than a kilometer away from him in terms of where he's living. It's home race. It's the race of his father in a way. So I think that he definitely wanted to perform. But to be honest, I don't really know what happened with Nys. It's sometimes he has these moments that the race doesn't really go his way. It might have been I don't think a crash, because it would have been caught on camera, but might have been something, but it was probably not a very good day.
I think for the rest of the riders in the top 10, we have all recently discussed them. I mean, it's good to see Nieuwenhuis have a good performance, or Adams, but we've all covered most of them pretty recently, so I don't really see a reason to repeat ourselves in this busy period, so I think we should cut it short. I will still mention the fact that there were some road riders racing today. Zdenek Štibar made his debut for the Jako Alula team, which is basically a bike exchange. He ended 19th. Tijmen Arendsman was racing his first race for Team Ineos. He ended 24th today. Let's go and talk about the women's race then. Marion Norbert Ribeiro had the fastest start, but Fem van Empel quickly moved into the first position. She was making her debut for the team of Jumbo Visma, and that also meant that it was the first time she was racing in the jersey which she earned at the European Championships. At the end of the first lap, she opened a gap over the rest. Why? Because Alvarado, who was in her wheel, was making a lot of mistakes. On the off-camber, the front wheel of Alvarado got stuck, which meant that she needed to pull her bike out again. Van Empel was gone into the distance. She would easily win this race. Behind, Alvarado kept making mistakes. She got stuck in that same off-camber rut again. A lap later, she made some mistakes in the pump track, which was downhill, which led to Brandt moving into second position. Brandt was also on an island and was easily able to claim second place. Alvarado was first fighting with Ribeiro for third, but also relatively early in the race distanced Ribeiro, and as Alvarado stopped making mistakes, she ended third. No real competition in terms of the podium positions today, but for the overall, there was some sort of competition. Betsema, who was leading the trophy with a huge lead going into the race, had a bad day. She was once again suffering at the beginning of the race, looked to be on track to lose 1 minute 40, judging by the first 2 laps, but she managed to recover in the second part of the race and eventually limited her damage to 1 minute and 10 seconds on Lucinda Brandt. So Issam, Van Empel today with a very impressive ride back from her injury, and it didn't really seem to hamper her all too much. She was immediately ready, went in with a lot of freshness, and it just looked all so strong today.
Yeah, there were some doubts, but I think those doubts are completely, removed because it was an outstanding performance. It was great to see her back. There were obviously the questions if she was going to be in form, but like I said, it was display of both, technically being in control and also just in terms of riding over the hills and stuff. It was truly class, and I think in the end it's quite easy to say that she completely deserved the victory, and it's for her a great way to start this 2023 with Jumbo, and it's a new partnership that she's entering. It was a new bike, but there was for her it was like it was everything was quite something that she already was used to or something. It looked very good, and it was a great display. And in the end, 2 minutes on Brandt, who is definitely not definitely not nothing. It's a rider of class, and to be giving 2 minutes to somebody, that is quite something. And it, in my opinion, it didn't look like it was the full 100% Fem van Empel. I think that there is a little bit of margin on it, and if that is the case, it's going to be a serious issue.
Yeah, she was on a new bike, and it didn't seem to hamper her too much, although there were quite some changes if we look at what she was riding. I mean, she's now on SRAM, which has a different way of shifting. She was riding a single at the front, when with Shimano she was riding a double. SRAM does seem better in terms of range that they have, and that you can get away with riding a single at the front. I think you can get away with a single on most of the courses. I mean, the range that they have on the back these days is just so big that you can save weight by racing with a single at the front, and there might be a handful of courses where you might need a double at the front. I don't know, for Herentals I would expect them to go with a single, although I could imagine a double working there because the climb is pretty steep, but that's for the tech talk. I mean, it's definitely a strong ride by Van Empel today, and I do think it helped that she didn't race all these races the previous week. I mean, if you do Mol, Gavere, Zolder, it's 3 races that follow each other super rapidly, and some very tough races there. Same goes for the riders at Tichem or Loenhout. So you need to make choices, and for Van Empel it was not a choice of luxury, but out of need, because she needed to recover. I did see that she was returning to training again, so it's not like she missed 2 weeks of training, but still, 2 weeks without races gives you this extra bit of freshness. I think we are going to see a very strong Fem van Empel for the remainder of the season, but also for the road season. I have pretty high expectations for that. I think I already went in with a bold prediction that she would end on the podium of Strade Bianche. I don't know how she'll do in terms of positioning, but I think the pure power is there. Again today, her seated acceleration was just absolutely insane. That's her biggest power. Out of a slow corner, she can get out of her saddle for 2 seconds, and that's not necessarily all too spectacular. But what follows when she sits down, she can accelerate a second and sometimes even a third time, and that just looks all so perfect, so smooth. That's really going to be her big weapon on the road, and therefore I think a course like Strade will suit her a lot. I do also think that Lucinda Brandt looked alright today. There have been some talks that she will be a big contender for the Worlds based on the program she is riding. I think that at this moment we still need to conclude that Van Anrooy, Pieterse and Van Empel are a bit better than her, but things are again looking promising. For her, the form is there, maybe a bit of tiredness in this period, but things are going well, and I wish I could say the same for Alvarado, but today really wasn't her day, especially in the first part of the race.
Yeah, sometimes you don't really have. It's not always a great day, and I think for her today it was just. Yeah, sometimes you just don't have it, and I think today it was a day. I think in terms of form it was alright, and it looked alright technically as well, but just the amount of mistakes and silly mistakes as well. Getting stuck in the mud twice with the front wheel is. It's definitely not ideal to get the most out of your race, but I think in the end, Brandt was also in a very good form and was riding quite well. So I think that in the end she was in the position that was the maximum achievable, and yeah, it's for her. It's just trying to look into the next races and see if it's possible to gain some time on Betsema.
Yeah, because Betsema, it's again not amazing, and her trainer, the court from Baal South, gave an interview during the race saying that Betsema at the moment simply just doesn't have the form, and things look promising in Zolder, but in Tichem and now here in Baal again it didn't look too amazing. I mean, the second part of the race for Betsema was much better. And that leads me to the hypothesis that she has done so much racing this season that tiredness is kicking in. We know that Betsema always is a rider that does almost the entire season. She did so in 2020-2021, COVID season, 21-22, last season, but also this season. And I feel that this season the cross calendar is a bit more packed. We have a bit more races, a bit more return to the pre-COVID era with a lot of double weekends. And that she's maybe doing too much, and that tiredness is impacting her racing. This case that in the first part of the race her legs feel tired, and that you need to go through that and then you get the going. In Zolder and Tichem, the opposite, that the tiredness means that she just lacks endurance and is tiring out easier. This is not the level that we are used to from Betsema. Normally she is a bit more consistent, and it's a shame because in the end, yes, she managed to limit the damage on Brandt. 1 minute and 12 seconds, 5 or 10 more I think were 5 bonification seconds lost. It's still not amazing though to lose that of her lead. Sure, she still has 3.5 minutes, but we are going to Herentals next. That's a tough course. If you lose another 1.5 minutes there, Brandt will well and truly be back in it with 2 minutes. Brussels, it looks like a relatively fun cross with these off cameras, but it's actually a super hard cross. Lille, Hamme, Kokzijde. Kokzijde should be something that suits her, but if you're already feeling tiredness now and not having the best form, it's going to be tough these 3 days. Well, not in a row, but 3 races in 5 days. I don't know. I don't feel too good about Betsema now, and it would be a shame to see her lose out on the X2O trophy. Not saying that it's happening, but there needs to be a bit of a turnaround somewhere for her to get back in it and get that good feeling back.
It's a difficult situation because I think that, you know, it's Van Empel is obviously not going to do the entire X2O trophy, and you know she's just so not going to be a contender because if you miss one race, it's 5 minutes that you lose. So I think Van Empel will then probably finish around the top 5 maybe, but you know it's for Betsema it's quite difficult, and if you don't have the legs to start well, especially in a race like Kokzijde where you normally should be gaining time on your competitors, and you do not start well in Kokzijde, that's then going to be quite difficult because we know Kokzijde can have those almost traffic jams that you meet in the morning, and if you're in it, it's quite difficult then to get around, and it takes something special to get around all the riders and get yourself to the front. So it's going to be a difficult task, and you know, to be honest, I see it happen that she's not going to take the X2O trophy home, but that depends mainly on how Alvarado and Brandt will be riding the next couple of races, and if Betsema is going to maintain this form, or even, you know, it even gets worse than it already is. In that case, I think it's almost impossible for her to hold this lead, because if you look at today alone in a course like Baal, then it's going to be difficult. If you're already going to be losing a minute here, a minute there, a minute, then it's going to be adding up, and at a certain point, it's like a yo-yo, and it's just going to give out at a certain point, and then it's going to be very difficult to fight back. So, you know, I really hope that she can bring it home, but it's going to be very, very difficult, more difficult than we thought before.
Let's look at the entire top 10 then. Van Empel with the win ahead of Brandt, Alvarado and Betsema. Ribeiro in 5th ahead of Honsinger, Van Alphen, Backstedt, Rochette and Munro. I think Backstedt performed a bit below what she did the past couple of races, but don't forget, she's a first year under 23, she is young, and if you are racing such a busy period and you race Mol, Gavere, Diegem, and then here in Baal, which is another tough course, there's no shame in having a bit of a bad day. I don't think that we should look anything behind that. And yeah, that's kind of what I think about Backstedt. And I was wondering what you were thinking about Ribeiro. 5th is in this start field kind of what I would expect, maybe below Honsinger, but with Kant taking a big break, she's returning in Herentals on the 3rd of January. I do wonder what you think about her chances at the Belgian Championships. Can you say anything about that, or do you want to wait for Kant to come back?
No, I think that she has a very good chance, to be honest. I think that if she gets to the Belgian Championships with a solid form, then it's going to be very difficult for Kant to maintain the championship. And I think Kant knows it. And that's probably one of the reasons why Kant also took the break. Obviously, there are multiple reasons for that, but I definitely think that Kant wants to keep the championship. It's for her, you know, an important streak that she has. So it's going to be quite something if Ribeiro actually wins it, because that's going to be an end of a streak and maybe even an end of an era in a way. But I don't think that it's impossible for Ribeiro. She's been riding quite well this season. It's not always been a very consistent season. Some races were better than others, but I think overall there were some improvements, especially compared to last year. The partnership with Krelan Friestad definitely has paid off, if you are talking about improvements. And today was a solid race, like you said. I think that Honsinger was definitely someone that I expected to be in front of her, but she started well, was was around Betsema, fighting with Betsema for fourth, and was close by. And I think in the end for Ribeiro it was a very, very strong race from her side, and the championships are within her possibilities. Why not?
The Belgian Championships will certainly be interesting because there is also still Laura Verdonschot who has a chance. A lot will depend on the conditions that they will be racing under. How will that course in Lokeren be? Will it be muddy? Will it be dry? Will it be fast? Might there be some snow? We'll need to wait and see, but I'm looking forward to it. It should be a better race than the past seasons, although, again, I feel like every year we're thinking, maybe Kant is going to lose this year, at least in the recent years, but then eventually she is simply the best. But we'll need to wait and see. Then to end this podcast, there was also racing in Pétange, which is a traditional race held in Luxembourg on the 1st of January. Joshua Dubois won the men's race ahead of Gerben Kuipers and Luca Dubois. Then the women's race was won by Manon Bakker ahead of Xaide van Sinai, who made the transfer to the team of Krelan. And the third place was for Francesca Baroni. Issam, thank you for being here. 6 crosses in this Christmas period done. It's been busy. Thank you for all your hard work.
Yes, thank you for having me. And on to the next one. I think Herentals is definitely going to be an interesting race to watch, and there's going to be probably a tighter fight than we had today in Baal.
Yes, we will be back with a podcast about Herentals that will be releasing this Wednesday. The race is taking place on Tuesday. Thanks everyone for listening, and goodbye.